welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. I'm Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company and managing partner of Saywitz Properties, and today is Tuesday, and we are back here again talking more real estate. We're going to give it a go. Before we get going, I do want to do another shout-out to all the servicemen and women that are out there that are trying to keep everybody at home safe, and we wish them and we hope that they do their job and do it well and do it quickly and safely and come home soon. With all of that said, I want to shift gears. We're going to talk today a little bit of politics, a little bit of city, a little bit of real estate, maybe some entertainment. I'm excited to have our guest on the show today, the esteemed Dr. Topher Taylor, who is business and entertainment extraordinaire and also the mayor of the great city of Indian Wells. Topher, welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me, Barry.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming on. We got a lot of stuff I want to cover because we got a lot of different avenues. You have a long history in the entertainment business and then have a new afterlife career in politics. But I want to start by going back to the beginning because you went to school at USC. You studied a couple of different things there. And then I guess I want to get an understanding of what your interests were going back at the beginning and how you got into the entertainment business in the first place.
So I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, fifth generation Californian. The ancestors came over for the gold rush and figured out that it's a beautiful place to stay and live. Both my parents went to Stanford, and I needed to get out of sleepy Menlo Park, which I love, but I was looking for a major city to go to, and USC fit the bill. When I came down, my initial thinking was to go back and work at the time. Hewlett-Packard and IBM were big companies. Apple was just emerging and thinking about technology. But what happened is coming to Los Angeles and going to USC is I started getting involved started a student radio station with a friend of mine and got on the speakers committee with a friend of mine, started dealing with talent agents, and began to realize, which wasn't an option in San Francisco, that there is a business called the entertainment industry, which is an exciting and dynamic place filled with creativity and innovation. So ultimately, as I went through my undergraduate years at USC, I hit the showbiz apple, if you will, and
right.
The Garden of Eden disappeared, and there it was.
And those kinds of jobs in that industry is a heck of a lot more fun than Hewlett-Packard or boring things like real estate and other things. I don't blame you.
It was interesting because I started at the William Morris Agency in the mailroom in a training program, and a lot of interesting high-level executives over the years, from Barry Diller to Jeff Katzenberg or Brian Lord, et cetera. These people all came through the training program process. And it's humbling, right? Because you're delivering packages out of getting a 4-year college degree. But the training program's great because you understand how the business flows internally, and then they give you a car to deliver scripts around the city, so you understand how the business works from a power base throughout the city of Los Angeles. And then you become an assistant to one of the powerful agents there, and then they give you a desk, a phone, a assistant, and a business card and say, go at it.
Yeah, and then you're a real person.
That's right.
And this was at a time really where USC, not that it wasn't a major university then, but really began to take off and grow,
right.
Expand, and not just be the hub in the center of Watts or near downtown. It really became more of a campus environment. And then the schools within the university also expanded and really raised the bar in terms of what they were doing.
Yeah, Steve Sample, the president, came from SUNY Buffalo, really changed the university and turned it into a global university versus a regional university, created kind of its own signature within higher education. We always talk about the Ivy Leagues, we talk about Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA. What USC's been able to do is extraordinary because they have an extraordinary arts program, and that would include music, one of the top music schools in the nation, up there with Juilliard and Curtis. Film, probably the best film school on earth. Architecture, one of the top architectural firms. or schools in the country, and drama, the drama department, and then fine arts. And so the Roski School of Fine Arts is a program that I'm still very much active in as a board member, and we've seen a lot of just great growth in students who come to USC to study the arts and then get jobs out of USC into the real world, which I understand, by the way, your son is just about ready to embark on, which is so exciting for him.
Yes, thank you. And we're all excited for him. In 30 days from today, he will be graduating from the School of Cinematic Arts from USC.
Well, fight on.
Yes, so exactly. Fight on. I got it down. And so fight on and get a job. That's my mantra
right.
to him. And I think his attitude is the same. I don't want to come back home, so I'm hard at work looking for work. So anybody out there has an opportunity for him, he's a good kid. We appreciate it. But yeah, it's really been an extraordinary experience for him, and he really got to meet some really neat and creative people and really work on what our professional sets. The training there in terms of putting a movie together or a short film or whatever they were working on is the same or very similar as to what you would experience in real life. You have to go out and go on set and rent a location and deal with insurance and contracts and all the crazy stuff that goes into putting a movie together. And they really teach them at an early age so that they get a flavor for everything. I'm really impressed with the program.
Yeah, Elizabeth Daly is one of the great deans in all of higher education and has done a scintillating job at creating the School of Cinematic Arts. And of course, the alums from George Lucas to Zemeckis et al. Are just engaged and interested in helping students, and so it's a special place, no question about it.
Yeah, let's go back. I want to come back to USC in a little bit, but in terms of your journey, so you get out in the real world, you got a desk now, and then what do? You got to go make deals, right? Basically, somebody says, hey, go.
There's no question. That's exactly right.
Go find somebody we can represent and make some money from.
Exactly. So as a young agent, you get handed a bunch of clients already, because probably the average agent has 70, 80 different clients, and not all of them are getting served to the liking of the client. So the new agents get fed clients that are within the agency needing more care, needing more touch. And then on top of that, you go out and sign clients that generate revenue. And so I got involved in TV packaging, which was exciting. And one of the areas that I gravitated toward as a passionate reader of children's books, I got involved in kids television. So I represented companies like Hanna-Barbera or Saban or Nelvana, which was ultimately a client and the company that said, hey, Topher, we love what you're doing for us as an agent. Why don't you come work for us and help us scale the business? And so after about 5 years of being an agent, I left to join Nelvana and then helped scale that business into kind of a leading global family entertainment company that produced animated series, Babar on HBO, Little Bear on Nickelodeon, Roly Poly Oly on the Disney Channel, and so many more television series.
Which is interesting how that, and I think Hollywood and the entertainment industry is probably the best example of, you network, you make contacts, and it really does open up other doors. It's really who you know, and so you go from one opportunity to the next, which turns into really a gigantic opportunity with a billion-dollar company.
Yeah, it's true. Relationships are very powerful and critical, I think, in every business, as you well know from being in real estate. So, because there's always money searching for an opportunity, and to get the opportunity often requires relationships. So you can be first in, first to the door, and try and close the deal before it becomes a wild competition. So I think that the agency business certainly enabled me to create relationships with buyers, let's say at all the broadcasters, network, understand what television license agreements look like, artist, writer, director deals look like. So then when you go into a small independent animation studio at the time, you're bringing an enormous amount of information and access that even that company didn't have. And so that enabled us to grow from about 500 employees to 3,000 employees with offices all over the world. And we distributed our television series in 120 countries. We went public and then ultimately sold to a company called Chorus Entertainment, which is a Viacom of Canada, if you will, in about 2004. And then after that, with a new owner in hand, the entrepreneur in me wasn't done. And so one of the founding executives of Nelvana, who invited me to leave William Morris, he and I left and started a new company called Cookie Jar Entertainment. And we rose about $250 million in private equity money. And then we bought Nelvana's leading competitor, a company called Cinar, which had collapsed in a heap of ashes after the founders had been caught taking money out of the treasury. Huh. And it was a big, hairy, ugly turnaround, but we did it. We went from losing about $20 million in revenue or EBITDA per year to making about $25 million EBITDA over the course of about 5 years. And then we combined that business with a publicly traded company called Decode that has now been renamed in combination with Cookie Jar to WildBrain. So WildBrain exists today as a publicly traded company in Canada that's in the family entertainment space and has a lot of the great library and intellectual property assets that we created, like, Kyle and Arthur and some wonderful television series that are within the WildBrain library.
It's exciting. I'm tired listening to you. That's a lot of stuff. So you're going from one venture to the next, and then at some point, do you get off the hamster wheel, if you will, and does the entrepreneur in you say, hey, it's enough, maybe I want to play some golf or slow down a little?
No.
And I think that's evident by the fact that now you're the mayor of the city of Indian Wells, because I feel like you sitting on the couch and watching some of those shows you made is maybe not the daily routine for you.
No. I've always called myself an insatiable curiositist. And therefore, my kind of belief in life is we need to be learning. And when we stop learning, it's time to move on. Since selling or merging, if you will, Cookie Jar into what is now WildBrain, helped a young man named Aaron Debevois in Santa Monica, California, launch a business which is now called Spotter, Spotter, Spotter.la. And what an amazing company. His brainchild, buying YouTube videos on a discounted cash flow basis at scale. Very similar to what we used to do at Nelvana and Cookie Jar, which is buying television libraries that generate cash flow over time and then building a library so that there's an ongoing cash flow in the business that's automatic, if you will. And he's built an incredible company that is alive and well. And then more recently, investing in two exciting businesses, one called Metabol, which is an AI-driven animation studio or platform that uses technology to automate the animation process. And secondly, starting a sumo wrestling league with a dear friend of mine, Stuart Snyder, who is a former CEO of WWE. And we're on the cusp of launching that business and very excited about it.
And the sumo wrestling is here, it's in Asia, or both?
It'll be a global sumo wrestling league that will have its roots in the U.S.
Exciting. It's the next wave after WWE.
There you go. That's what we think.
Yeah. I get it.
And then, of course, during that whole time, I got a master's in healthcare administration, got a PhD in public policy, all from USC. And when I moved out to Indian Wells from Los Angeles, during COVID, when everything was shut down, and a sheriff here in Riverside County who's running for governor, Chad Bianco, took the bold move of keeping everything open, saying, I'm not going to arrest somebody for trying to make a living, i.e. keeping a restaurant open, and I'm not going to arrest two adults who want to go into a restaurant and have a meal because they're adults. And at the time, it was pretty risky, but in retrospect, he was right. That was probably the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We came out here and settled in Indian Wells, and after getting the PhD in public policy 2 years ago, ran for office. That's what I told the dean of the Price School at USC, who is fantastic. I said, you get your degree in August, you run in September, win in November, and become city councilman in December. Isn't that what all graduates are supposed to do?
That's the short path, right? You just took the fast track lane. And what was the epiphany or the game plan with regards to running for office? Obviously, you get the degree, so you have the historical experience in terms of analyzing what's going on, and then you're living there. And I guess if it was me, I'd say, hey, I want to make the place that I live as good a place as possible, as safe a place, and as nice a place, and happy to take the gloves off and roll up the sleeves and dig in. How was it? How did it go for you? Did you wake up one day and just go, I want to be mayor, I want to be on the city council?
So this curiosity that I talked about was definitely heightened when the Obama administration put through a policy called the Affordable Care Act. And a lot of my doctor friends, and I have many, said this is the end of medicine. So I downloaded the Affordable Care Act and read the whole thing, which is in itself quite an undertaking if you have ever read an act from Congress.
Yeah.
But I realized going through it that there are a lot of really significant and important issues that the Affordable Care Act was trying to address. One is we as patients own our data. I tried to move doctors at one point in my life and said, could you send my files to the new doctor? And they said, no, those are mine. So that issue is now taken care of. Sharing data. So having a database, a collective database that is used so that large-scale models and AI can help better predict your future health, let alone public health, like in the event that there's another contagion that hits in a particular city before it travels and decimates populations. Having data in a collection is critical for our nation's health and our individual health. And the list goes on. And so I said, this is really interesting. And then I realized I didn't know that much about government, and yet it impacts all of our lives. And I got this PhD in public policy. And in part, it was also because Trump had come into his first administration. And a lot of my Democratic friends in Los Angeles were saying that the world is coming to an end. And yet there's some interesting policies that he was talking about. Let's push pause button on personality or his way of being. But there were a lot of very interesting policies coming out. And the more I dove into this, the more I realized I didn't know that much about how our very government worked. And that's why the PhD came to be. And that's why I said it's what's super clear is that 85% of Americans, red or blue, think that local government is very effective.
Yeah.
While the same 85% of Americans feel that federal government is ineffective.
Yep.
And so what's really exciting about being at a local level and being the mayor of a city is that on this Thursday, we're going to have city council meeting. And Friday, to the extent that we pass policy on Thursday, Friday it will be implemented. Not 6 months from now, not a year from now, but there's real concrete policy being deployed to impact the city of Indian Wells and potentially our region immediately. And that's a really satisfying and wonderful feeling to be able to really live your life trying to embellish, protect, create value for all your residents.
And you get to see the results, as opposed to, I could work on this for years and no one will ever know the difference.
That's right.
And so you're making a difference and you're making it happen, whether that's in business or private life or impacting other people. You have the capacity to do that. And hopefully the people and the residents of Indian Wells appreciate that. I do. It's a struggle to go to a city council meeting and stay till 1 or 2 in the morning and have the people come up and yell and scream and then nothing gets done.
What's interesting about getting involved in local government is a couple of things. One is that, yes, you can focus on potholes and police and fire, for sure. And that's good enough, right? Because at the end of the day, I think all of us who live in this state, in this country, need to be able to walk safely down the street, go to our parks safely, go to our schools safely, and have a clean and healthy environment in which to live and grow. I think that's kind of the bottom line. But what happens is then you can raise your hand once and get involved in regional politics. So out here in the Coachella Valley, there are 9 cities comprising the Coachella Valley Association of Government, which do things collectively, whether it be on-ramps or off-ramps to freeways or streamlining traffic lights on Highway 111 that cross multiple city borders, et cetera. Or you can raise your hand again and get involved in Riverside County politics. So I'm a commissioner on the Riverside County Transportation Commission, which is a fantastic organization that basically is responsible for the trains and the 10 freeway. Or you can raise your hand again and get involved in advocacy groups like League of California Cities, Contract Cities, all of which try and protect the rights from cities, for cities, from Sacramento trying to take power, money, et cetera, and create unfunded mandates that cities have to deploy. It's easy to get involved and really impact statewide initiatives when you're the mayor of a local city. It's really interesting. Once you plug in, here's what I like to say. If you're an outfielder for the Sacramento Athletics and you want to call the owner of the Atlanta Braves, you could probably get him on the phone. Me, as just an outsider who loves baseball, would have a very difficult time getting the general manager or the owner of the Atlanta Braves to call me back. But when you're inside, it's amazing, who you can engage with and who you have access to. And there's a lot to be done.
Yeah, and there's no question. And so, if you look at the history of the Coachella Valley, and I've owned property and had a home out there for years, the growth out there has really been dramatic and dynamic, and it really went from retirement community and really solely just a couple of small pockets of areas to really being, for the most part, seamlessly developed across the valley from Palm Springs all the way out to Indio and beyond. And all of these cities have the same issue in terms of dealing with how they continue to grow and move forward. And so while Indian Wells is, I don't know if it's the smallest or certainly one of the smallest in terms of population, the fact that you're next to all of these other cities, it really is a group effort, I think.
Yeah, Indian Wells absolutely outpunches for its weight class, but we also kind of leaders in our respective fields. We have time for a fun kind of real estate story to share that impact?
Yeah, I'm here.
So when Indian Wells was founded almost 60 years ago now, the founders of the city thought that what they would do is run the city almost like a country club, where they would have everybody pay $3,000 a year for the privilege of living in the city and having clean streets and landscaping, et cetera. And then in so doing, made a deal with the county of Riverside to have about 5% of the property tax come to the city of Indian Wells. Most cities in the state of California have about 17 to 22% of the property taxes come back into the city. That wasn't working so well. And after a few years, people said, I'm not going to pay this. I don't have to pay this $3,000 a year to live in the city. And so the city was teetering economically. And to this day, probably would have become part of Palm Desert or La Quinta if it wasn't for a real estate developer who came in as mayor. And he, at the time, cleverly accessed development funds, redevelopment funds that the state of California had provided local cities to basically grow and develop their economies. The initial thinking was to turn around blight areas and resurrect them. But what this gentleman did is Dick Oliphant, Mayor Dick Oliphant was his name. He took the redevelopment money and helped create 2 golf courses, public golf courses that the city owns, enable 2 hotels to come in that sit side by side next to these golf courses, and help move what was then a local tennis tournament gaining momentum to the city of Indian Wells, and helped become one of the first sponsors, if not the first sponsor, of what is today the BNP Paribas. And those moves, becoming a destination for sports and entertainment, saved the city and are the number 1 and 2 generators of revenue for the city, and that's why we exist today.
And some of the benefits for people who live in the city of Indian Wells is you get to play golf at those public golf courses at a much discounted price, and you get access to tickets at the tournament if you live in the city.
That's right. So we have what they call a residence benefit card that is unlike any other city on earth, and it's really extraordinary. We're a sponsor of the BNP, so we have a lot of seats that we literally give our residents who have a home in the city on a lottery basis. And then these 2 golf courses where, if you just walked in from down the street, you'd be paying anywhere from $250 to $350 a round. And for residents who subscribe annually to a resident benefit card that enables golf, we charge around $50 to play a round of golf on 2 public courses that are ranked in the top 100 nationally. So they're really spectacular golf courses.
And there's other cities out there that do that, but I think the deal at Indian Wells is probably the best one that I've seen or heard of. There's no question in terms of the caliber of golf and the cost benefit.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you, because as a guy who owns real estate out there in the valley and been looking around at different home prices and real estate values and keeping an eye on the market, it seems to me like Indian Wells is, and people often refer to it as the jewel of the desert or the Beverly Hills of the Coachella Valley. And certainly there's no question you drive into the city and then you see all the flowers and the streets are much nicer and it's super clean and it looks great. But the property values really are at a premium versus some of the other outlying cities.
Yeah, block away.
Yeah.
It's true.
And so I guess I'm curious as to your take on why that is and how you sustain that.
We take great pride in the service that we provide our residents. For example, if you have to take something happened to you at your home and you have to take an ambulance to Eisenhower Hospital and you don't have insurance, the city pays for that. If there's no potholes in our streets, if there are, we go out and fix them. If we take care of our residents. Recently, I spent a day with the fire department, which also has ambulatory care. And after sitting in the back of a fire truck on 20 plus runs or in an ambulance, seeing how they live their lives, I realized that a great majority of the call are for trauma, head trauma, people who have fallen down, because you have a slightly older community out here,
right,
and there's a lot of falls. Sometimes it's on carpet, but sometimes it's on cement or tile or whatever, and there's a real injury. And the closest trauma center from Indian Wells was in Palm Springs until we rose our hand and said to Eisenhower Hospital, who's the largest hospital in the valley and the one that has the highest level of care, we said we want to help fund a trauma center. We voted and sent them $1 million, and here we are. They're beginning to deploy and create an excellent trauma center, which is now 10 minutes away from our residents versus 45 minutes away. And so these things just add up between the golf and the BNP Paribas, and we're now soliciting great chefs to come in to our city. Tia Carmen is a restaurant at the Grand Hyatt, and it's probably the only Michelin star experience in the desert. Kestrel restaurant is a famous chef, Richard Blaze. So we're constantly trying to improve the service we provide the community. And I think it shows. I think you're right. I think it shows.
Yeah, and I think, look, as the population gets older, as people in Los Angeles retire, migrate, whatever you want to call it, certainly during COVID, but continued trend to live more full-time or full-time out in the desert and get out of LA. You have a desire for people to live in similar types of areas that they might have lived in Los Angeles. And so Indian Wells really does have the mystique of the desert, of really the pinnacle of, if you really want to, and certainly talking to people who live in the city, they all say the same thing, which is, you got to be in Indian Wells. You don't want to be in another city. And
I love it.
Yeah, no. So look, it's right in the center. You can get to El Paseo shopping. You can get out to La Quinta.
Yes.
So from a location standpoint, it really is great as well.
Or Coachella or Stagecoach.
if that's your thing, yeah. If you want to say, and certainly the tennis, you can, depending upon where you live, you can drive your golf cart or walk over as opposed to dealing with the traffic. And I guess let's talk about the tennis tournament for a little bit, because it really has grown. It is, isn't it, the largest tennis tournament other than the majors?
Yeah. So we had 527,000 people come over a 10-day period of time, which set a new record. The tournament, which broadcasts on the Tennis Channel, was the highest rated tennis tournament in the history of the Tennis Channel. And we had all kinds of sponsors that were new this year. In fact, Lululemon was a sponsor. They ran out of merchandise after 5 days. They were so shocked at how much interest there was that they were unprepared. And there's now a $20 million purse for the players, which is the highest of any tournament in the world outside of the majors. And in talking to some of the tennis stars that came to the event, it's really interesting, because when you think about the other majors, they're New York, London, Paris, Melbourne. This is a unique place. Like, you're in the desert. There's no traffic per se. It's safe. It's clean. You're not looking out your window at tall buildings. You're looking at beautiful mountains and blue sky. And so it's just a different vibe. And of course, it's champagne and caviar for everyone.
Right. And the fact that the money is there will continue to attract the top 10 and 10.
For sure. Larry Ellison and his team do an incredible job at making this tennis event really a signature event for the entire year.
And I feel like the olden days, if you will, it's not that long ago, but the Charlie Passerells and the Ray Moores of really making the strides to get the stadium constructed.
Ray Moore has done an incredible job and continues to do. We work very closely with them, and I got to tell you, it's a special thing to experience every year. Having been in the entertainment industry and been an agent and very familiar with how sports works, it's a Herculean effort to put on one of these tournaments. Just to give you a sense, like this year, we reduced traffic time from the 10 freeway to the BNP Paribas by almost 20 minutes by synchronizing traffic lights. Behind the scenes, because of what's happening in the world today, another $600,000 was spent quietly on security. And nobody noticed it, but it was safe. Nothing happened. It was fantastic. And more to come, more greatness to come.
And so what are some of the challenges that you're dealing with now on the city council level in terms of going forward? You mentioned safety, we talked about traffic, you talk about beautification of the city, and it sounds like you've got your arms around all of those. Is there things like pressure from Sacramento for building affordable housing or dealing with homelessness? Your city is not that big and the population's not as big as some of the other ones, but do you experience some of these other things?
Oh yeah, for sure. Every city in the state of California has an obligation to build a certain amount of low-income housing. Each city is given a RHNA credit number, and I think ours is just under 300 units for the size city that we have. And so what's challenging for cities like Indian Wells that are landlocked, and I would say the same is true for Beverly Hills or Woodside or whatever, you have a real challenge because what are you supposed to do? The land costs are significantly higher than potentially your neighboring cities who have land accessible that can be built on. And one of the things that we do is get involved in advocacy in Sacramento. And so this subject specifically I'm very active in, which is, I believe, and I think there's a lot of people who share my conviction, that Sacramento needs to figure out how to enable cities like ours to share RHNA credits by building in neighboring cities.
Yeah.
The Sacramento wants to build housing, and yet sometimes they get stuck into philosophical issues like, let's say, forcing social change. So what prevents, let's say, a city like Indian Wells or Beverly Hills from building is land, cost, etc. But if we were able to write a check to our neighboring city, Palm Desert, for example, that has a college, 2 or 3 university offices, UCR has an office in Palm Desert, San Bernardino has an office, College of the Desert, and they need student housing badly. And so if we can write a check and enable that to happen,
aren't you doing your share?
It could have been built by now.
And you're contributing to the common goal and the common good and not trying to figure out how you get some developer or you try and take on the challenge of going with a project that makes no financial sense whatsoever or that just doesn't even exist.
That doesn't exist. That's exactly right. There's, I think in this year where there's budget deficits at a state level, we're having some attention. And by the way, here's another thing to think about. The entire Coachella Valley is about the size of Fresno, okay, from a population perspective. So on the subject of RHNA, by preventing Indian Wells from investing in Palm Desert or Rancho Mirage from investing in Cathedral City or Indio, it's the same thing as saying the east side of Fresno you're preventing from investing in the west side of Fresno. It makes, there's no intellectual sense to limiting the ability for or stopping the growth of development to address housing and affordability, which are the 2 main issues in the state of California right now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And then I guess we'll see who winds up going to the next level for the general election here, since it's a daily change of circumstances, and whether that policy, without getting too deep in the woods and bashing anybody, but in terms of whether that policy changes after the general election and how that goes. But I think we all agree that there's a real housing issue. I think where the disagreement becomes is how you try and get from A to B.
Yeah, there's no question about it. There's just no, and I'll tell you another issue that's interesting at our local level, and this goes to what we talked about before, which is local can access national, right? And the impact that you have and the access you have is really fascinating. So the FAA changed the landing pattern over coming into Palm Springs Airport from down valley to right over Indian Wells. And last month, 75 planes a day from 6 a.m. till midnight come in right over Indian Wells for the first time ever. And needless to say, the residents are really upset, not just from the noise level, but the potential danger levels, et cetera, because Bermuda Dunes is a private airport that is a stone's throw away in La Quinta, and their Bermuda Dunes takeoff pattern is right below the PSP landing pattern. And there's definitely a significantly increased risk in some kind of collision or some kind of accident that can occur in the air. And so what do? At Palm Springs Airport, you meet with them and they say, we don't set the FAA landing policy, the FAA does. So then you've got to figure out, how do you influence the FAA? So you start dealing with your congressman, and we have an outstanding congressman named Ken Calvert, who's been redistricted, by the way.
Yeah.
But he has done incredible things for our valley, and my hat's off to him. And then, so he then is going to try and get us in front of the FAA and have a conversation himself. And you start using your relationships within the system to impact change that works for everyone. In fact, Orange County had a very similar situation a few years ago, 2016, I think it was, where the FAA changed the takeoff pattern right over Newport Beach. And the city of Newport was up in arms, and it took the city and the county of Orange to sue the FAA to change the landing pattern, and the FAA settled, I think, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, which worked out well for everyone. So we don't want to get to that point of the lawsuit, but we absolutely are at our wits' end with regard to this new change. And so there's an example of a local government trying to deal federally with an impact that affects everyone in Indian Wells.
Yeah, and I think the moral of the story is, look, as the communities in the desert continue to grow, you're going to continue to have more big boy issues that involve other people and other players. And certainly the city's fortunate, and I feel like grateful to have people like you that are willing to step in and take action and try and do something to get things done. And I think the combination of working with the other cities together certainly gives you better odds to be able to get that done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's exciting. And it's intellectually stimulating, so it's really fun.
So it's good. Paul's waving at me like we could go all day. I may have to buy you lunch or something so we can continue the conversation, but unfortunately...
Happy to come on again.
Yeah. It's exciting stuff. And number one, if people want to find out more information about the city of Indian Wells, what's the website? Where can they go to get more information?
You can go to cityofindianwells.org or cityofindianwells.com. And there's a lot of good stuff there. That's an excellent place.
And if you want tickets to the tennis tournament for next year, you'll have to wait until they go on sale.
You have to go in the lottery. You have to buy a home in Indian Wells, sign up for the resident card, and then go in the lottery.
There you go. You can go to the MLS for that, or you can go to Zillow or Redfin, start looking for your house now. But with that said, Tober, I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your thoughts and your history, and much continued success to you and your business ventures in the city of Indian Wells, and appreciate all the good work that you're doing.
Thank you. Good luck to your son. This is a really exciting time. Getting out of college and diving into business for the first time. I remember those days so fondly. So good luck to him, and I'm always here for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thanks again for being on the show. To all of our viewers and our listeners out there, once again, I am Barry Saywitz. We will be back here next week talking more real estate. A big thanks again to everybody here at OC Talk Radio for making it happen. We'll see you next time on Let's Talk Real Estate.
There you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.